They say time heals all wounds, but some wounds don't want healing. I'm Evelyn Brooks, born in 1957 in Charleston, South Carolina. Back in 2022, when I turned 65, my son and his wife gave me an empty box for my birthday and laughed like it was some inside joke. I felt invisible, used, discarded, but then something happened that flipped the script. Today, at 68, I settled near the ocean in Santa Barbara. I'm finally sharing this because no woman should let disrespect pass as love. If you're listening, drop your city below, and don't forget to like this story and subscribe because somebody needs to hear this. When I gave birth to Daniel in 1985, I remember cradling him against my chest and whispering promises. I'll protect you. I'll teach you how to love. I meant every word. My husband, Harold, a quiet librarian with a passion for gardening, was by my side, crying even harder than I was. We built our lives carefully, brick by emotional brick, Sunday dinners, school projects, camping trips by the lake. But somewhere along the way, life took our blueprint and smeared it beyond recognition. Daniel was my only child, and when Harold passed away from pancreatic cancer 12 years ago, I held on tighter than I should have. I see that now. I helped Daniel and his wife, Clarissa, buy their first home, gave them the down payment, co-signed for their second car, babysat their daughters every summer while they went to Mexico for marriage refreshers. And yet, over the years, I noticed the smiles shrinking. The invites stopped coming. The way Clarissa wrinkled her nose whenever I brought up Harold, or how Daniel sighed when I asked to see the girls. Still, I blamed myself. Maybe I called too often. Maybe I gave too many parenting tips. Maybe I loved too much. On the morning of my 65th birthday, I put on a coral blouse Harold once said brought out the light in my eyes. I even wore the gold locket he bought me in 1990 inside it, a tiny picture of the three of us from a fishing trip on Lake Moultrie. I set the table with china that hadn't seen daylight since our last family Thanksgiving, thinking maybe, just maybe, this would be the day we turned the page. They came in at 5:17 p.m. Daniel in jeans, Clarissa in a too-tight dress that looked like it was stitched from disinterest. The girls Lena and Evie barely looked up from their phones. Clarissa handed me a box wrapped in silver paper and said with a shrug, "From all of us." I sat down and pulled the ribbon gently, heart pounding like a schoolgirl's. I lifted the lid and inside there was nothing. Nothing at all. Not a note. Not a joke. Just empty space. I blinked. Thought maybe it was a prank. Clarissa chuckled. "We thought it was symbolic," she said. "You always say you don't need anything." Daniel laughed too short and sharp. "And now you've got it." I smiled. I don't know why. Maybe because crying would have given them too much. That night, after they left without touching the carrot cake I made from scratch, I sat at the kitchen table alone and stared at that empty box like it was whispering secrets. I thought of all the birthdays I'd bent over backward for Star Wars cakes, rented ponies, soccer-themed goodie bags. All the sacrifices I made so Daniel could go to private school, then college, then grad school. I remembered the day Clarissa moved in and told me my floral curtains were embarrassing. And Daniel let her. I used to believe love was about giving without expectations. But there's a fine line between giving and being gutted. By 11 p.m., I'd made my decision. The next morning, I called my attorney, Mr. Hargrove, a man Harold and I had trusted for over 2 decades. "I want to change my will," I said, voice steady. "I want Daniel and his family removed completely." There was a pause. "All right, Evelyn. And what would you like to do with the estate?" "I want to create something that lives longer than ingratitude," I replied. "A scholarship in Harold's name, donations to children's literacy programs, and the lake house I swallowed. I'm selling it. I'm moving to Santa Barbara. Marjorie's been inviting me for years." Mr. Hargrove didn't ask why. Maybe he already knew. I didn't tell Daniel or Clarissa anything. Let them think the gravy train was still chugging along. That was my quiet revenge, dignity, distance. I spent the next few months cleaning out closets and boxing up memories. I kept Harold's garden journals and my collection of handwritten lesson plans from my 33 years as a math teacher. Everything else, I gave away. One day, while packing, I found an old voice recorder tucked inside a shoebox. On it, a little Daniel lisped, "Mommy, when I grow up, I'm gonna buy you a castle." I played it twice. Then once more. Then I cried. Not from sadness but from the brutal realization that that little boy was long gone. Clarissa texted me in June. We're planning a beach trip. Can you watch the girls the second week?
I replia. No.
I'll be out of town.
No explanation. No guilt.
No begging for approval. In July, I closed on a cozy 2-bedroom house 5 blocks from the Santa Barbara Pier. Marjorie picked me up from the airport, tears in her eyes, arms wide open. It's about time, Evie, she whispered. You've been dying while standing still. And she was right. Charleston held too many shadows. It was time to chase light. I didn't need to stage a dramatic confrontation. I let time and silence speak for me. But as the weeks passed, I began to miss my granddaughters, not the version Clarissa had turned them into, but the girls I once sang lullabies to. So I did something risky. I mailed Lena a letter. Just her. Inside I wrote, I hope you're well. I've moved. I'm doing better than I've felt in years. If you ever want to talk not about money, but about life, I'm here. I didn't mention the will. I didn't mention the box. 2 weeks later I got a letter back. Dear Grandma,
I'm sorry.
I knew the box was empty. I didn't laugh. I felt sick. I wanted to say something but I didn't know how. I miss you. Can I visit one day? I cried. Real full-body sobs that cracked something old and bitter inside me. But I still didn't change my will. Because love can heal but consequences must teach. Summer melted into fall, and Santa Barbara became my sanctuary. I'd wake to the sound of waves, sip coffee on my porch, and walk barefoot on the sand. Marjorie and I joined a watercolor class. I volunteered at a local reading center, helping little ones untangle words the way I used to help Daniel. I was no longer just someone's mother or widow, I was Evelyn again. But just as I began to believe the chapter was closed, Daniel reached out. He called in late October, his voice dipped in guilt and fake warmth. Mom, Clarissa's been thinking. We should have dinner together. Clear the air. I didn't reply right away. I could feel the tremble in his tone, the kind that comes when someone senses a door slowly closing. I'll come back to Charleston, I said calmly. Let's do it at my old house. One last dinner. I had already decided. This was goodbye. I returned to the house a week before the dinner, mostly to gather anything I'd left behind before the final sale. Stepping inside felt like walking into a museum of my own disappointment. I opened old cupboards, touched worn photo frames, and then I got to work. I didn't need revenge with flames. I needed clarity with fireproof resolve. They arrived early. Clarissa wore red, lips too bright, like she was dressing for control. Daniel looked aged, thinner. The girls hovered like satellites, unsure where to land. I served roasted chicken with rosemary, Harold's favorite. The conversation was polite but stiff. Lena wouldn't meet my eyes. Clarissa faked laughs like she was on stage. Daniel asked about the weather in California, like I'd moved to a different planet. Then as dessert was served, I stood. I have something to say, I began. Clarissa rolled her eyes. Daniel shifted. Only Lena looked alert. You gave me an empty box for my birthday. I continued, my voice calm, clear, and unwavering. That box wasn't just a bad joke. It was a symbol of how little you see me, of how disposable I've become in your life. It hurt, more than anything else in my 68 years. Mom, come on, Daniel began, but I raised a hand. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to tell you this. The will is changed. The house is sold. The accounts are locked. Everything is being donated to causes that reflect what Harold and I stood for: education, literacy, kindness. There will be a scholarship in his name. And not a single dime will go to either of you. Clarissa's fork clattered to her plate. You're joking, she snapped. I met her gaze.
No, Clarissa.
That was last year. The joke was the box. Daniel looked pale. Mom, you can't just. I can. And I have. I turned to Lena, whose cheeks were flushed, eyes brimming. This isn't about hate. It's about the truth. I loved you all. I gave everything. But love without respect becomes a prison. And I've broken out. Clarissa laughed bitterly. So what? You expect applause? You're abandoning your family for strangers and sandcastles. I'm reclaiming myself, I said. Daniel slammed his hand on the table. This is spiteful. You're punishing us because we forgot your birthday. No, I said, voice trembling now. Because you forgot who I am. Silence settled like fog. Lena pushed her chair back, stood up and walked over to me. She wrapped her arms around my waist and whispered, I'm sorry. I held her. Just for a second. Then she stepped away. Clarissa muttered something under her breath and stormed out. Daniel followed, slamming the door behind them. Only Lena lingered. I don't care about the money, Grandma, she said. Can I still write to you? You already did, I smiled. And you'll always get a reply. 3 weeks later, I finalized the donation paperwork. The house was sold to a young couple expecting twins. The scholarship fund was launched at the school where Harold taught part-time in his last years. The reading center got new books, new shelves, and a plaque in Harold's honor. Back in Santa Barbara, I started hosting monthly story nights for neighborhood kids. Every now and then, I'd get a letter from Lena. She started college, studying early childhood education. Her last letter ended with, Thank you for not giving up on me. Sometimes I wonder if Daniel regrets what he did. If he lies awake at night, haunted by a ribboned box full of nothing. I'll never know. And that's okay. Because I no longer live for the version of me that needed his validation. I live for the woman who wakes up near the sea, paints wildflowers, and teaches toddlers to love books. I live for Evelyn. The world didn't end because I walked away from disrespect. This journey wasn't easy. It broke me open in ways I can't explain. But in that breaking, I bloomed. And to any woman listening, especially the ones who've given everything, only to be left with scraps, I want you to know this. You are not empty. You are not disposable. You are not too old to start over. Forgive if you must. Forget if you can. But never, ever let someone hand you nothing and call it love. If you felt this story, drop your city below. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember who they are. Moral: sometimes the most powerful revenge is reclaiming your worth quietly and walking into a life that no longer needs their approval.